no matter how good something looks or big something looks, I mean, probably the better and bigger it looks, it might come with a lot more kind of responsibility and stress.
Welcome to Promote the Hell Out of It. I am your host, Ms. Trujillo, and I just love moving forward and learning new things. And what better way to do that than to chat to people who can teach me, right? And this episode is one that I've been excited to share with everyone. I get to chat to Luke Hodson, the creator of awesome merch. Now, I expect that some of you will already know them. I grew up using their services and hearing them recommended over and over again. And in 2017, they grew to 5.5 million in revenue and produced their 65 millionth product. So, obviously, I had a lot to chat to Luke about. I really recommend sharing this episode with anyone who's thinking of starting a business, has their own business, or just wants a little bit of motivation, because Luke is someone with bucketfuls of motivation and someone who is really, really encouraging to talk to. His story is absolutely wonderful, and we talk about a bunch of stuff, everything from crowdfunding to starting out right at the start with £350 invested to online marketing. We cover a load of stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Here it is.
No matter how good something looks or big something looks, I mean, probably the better and bigger it looks, it might come with a lot more kind of responsibility and stress.
Luke, I am so happy to have you on the show. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you, and thanks for having me.
No, it's really good. I've wanted to chat to you for a long time. I think that anyone that's especially in the DIY music scene who's used awesome merch before definitely looks up to you in terms of starting a business and being hardworking. So it's an honor to get to talk to you about it.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
I was just reading, obviously as prep work, the interview you did with Sophie for the Lush website, the origin story of how everything started off. And it was a wonderful interview. So I'll try and not repeat too many of the same questions. But there's so much about it that I would love to maybe dive into in a bit of extra detail, if that's all right.
Yeah, cool. That sounds really good.
So one of the things that for me is amazing about what you've done is the fact that you started at 19 whilst doing a law degree, which already sounds like a lot to be taking on, but also that you started by buying one piece of equipment at £350. So why that piece of equipment? And in hindsight, would you have still done the same thing?
That's a good question. So basically, I was looking for something to do when I went to uni to basically earn a little bit of pocket money, and badges was the cheapest option for me to kind of do that. So I wanted to make merch for bands. I had a bunch of friends in bands, and I was just looking around for maybe a month at something I could do. I'd actually bought 100 badges when I was in a band when I was 17. So yeah, basically kind of settled on that and bought a machine off of eBay, and it started pretty slowly, but then it started to snowball. So whether I do it differently, I'm not sure really, because I set out with like no real expectations except for trying to do something to earn like 50 or £100 a week, and yeah, it kind of it was the right amount of money to spend to try and earn 50 quid a week.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes sense. And I guess you talked about Punktastic forums, which to me played a big part in discovering music and being part of the music scene when I was younger. How crucial was that forum to the company starting out, I guess?
It was pivotal. Honestly, I'm not sure that we'd kind of be here today if it wasn't for Punktastic and a bunch of the people and bands that kind of frequented that forum. Certainly, like our first 20 orders really came off Punktastic and gave us a proof of concept, and a little bit of encouragement to actually kind of keep going with it and making badges. So yeah, it was super important, and I booked a bunch of bands and was fairly active on the forum as well, and that built our initial customer base and got us some attention in the early days for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the scene has definitely changed a lot, and I'm just talking about online, how companies market themselves in the 14 years, obviously, that you've been a company. Would you say that like things like Facebook groups have taken over the forums, and are they working as well as something like the Panktastic forum did?
I love forums and the OG forums like Punktastic because I think they were their own they were their own environment where everyone was about that whatever it was, so whether it's punk music or whether it's a niche audio forum or whatever. I feel Facebook groups are fine, but it's a little harder to be active in a genuine way on a Facebook group because I don't know, you've got a lot of other things going on
Yeah.
Facebook, right? And back on like a pure forum, it's all about that community and that niche, and you're in a kind of more closed environment.
Yeah, I think that's true. One of the things I found was that finding forums like 10 years ago seemed like you'd found a little gem. It was hard work to find a good forum that you got along with everyone with, and that was something that interested you. Whilst the ease of having access to like literally hundreds of forums or Facebook groups in seconds, it means you're kind of inundated with stuff the whole time, and sticking to one and becoming part of a community seems a bit more difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, back in the day, people would literally spend hours and hours on one forum, and Punktastic in particular. They used to put on Punktastic shows, and like hundreds of people from around the country would come
Yeah.
and go to the shows. And I'm not sure. I'm sure there are instances where Facebook groups are very like active and stuff, but I think the kind of concentrated passion around a single kind of group or community has been like diluted a little bit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving forwards from the Panktastic Forum era, those first 20 orders, what was the point when you went, holy crap, this might actually be something I need to spend more time on, and I might be making more than 50 to £100 a week on it?
Well, even for the first year, really, it was fairly. It was consistent. I remember maybe selling £500 worth of stuff in a week, and it
Oh.
blowing my mind in the first
Yeah.
year. I was like, "Whoa, that's all the money ever." In the second year, really, it started to get a little bit more out of control. I was making like 2,000 to 3,000 badges a day, having to skip lectures, run to the post office most evenings at 5:20 and argue with the postman that he should take my parcels. Um, so that started to really gear up, and probably close to 18 months to 2 years in, I was finding myself struggling to kind of keep up with demand, making all these badges by hand. And I
Yeah.
ended up wanting a £5,000 badge machine, which is quite a step up. Um, but the initial idea really was just so I could continue studying and making a bit of money, even with that machine. It was just hopefully I was going to be able to do the work a little faster. So it was probably 2 years in when I realized actually I need some help. I need some kind of additional like people to come and help me make the actual things. That it started to feel like it was becoming something.
Yeah, that's great. So, what I did want to ask you about that period in time is you said you had to start missing lectures because it was getting so busy. Were you still passionate about the degree you were doing at that point, or was it starting to sort of fizz out?
I mean, I absolutely hated law after one semester. So I finished the year out, but I probably stopped trying too hard towards the end of my first year of law. I actually switched degrees in my second year and started doing politics, which
Yeah.
which I enjoyed a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I was fairly passionate about it. I didn't know, I didn't have any grand plans once I quit law to which career I kind of wanted to go into. So I was just really making badges, going to uni, enjoying my time like in Leeds, putting on shows and stuff like that. So I'd say I wasn't all about it, but certainly I found it interesting and was trying.
No, I think that's important though, because I think a lot of people who listen to this and myself can relate so much to having a period in our lives where you just kind of going along with it, if that makes any sense. You can start projects and they can start making money, but it's not like you 100% need to know what your plan is at that point.
No, for sure. I mean, I didn't know what my plan was probably for 5 or 6 years after I started making badges. We just kind of, I wouldn't say muddled along, but it was just progressively kind of doing this project and then starting to earn a bit of pocket money that turned into, oh, maybe this is enough to kind of support me, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
where it's going to go, but I'm just going to kind of carry on trying to grow it a little bit and kind of doing the next bit of it.
Yeah, and with that in mind, you mentioned the next sort of big investment you did when you needed the £5,000 machine, and I think I read that you put that on the credit card. Yeah, when you did that.
Yeah, it was back in the days of very easy credit because it was before the before the recession. So my my dad was actually kind enough to take out a credit card in his name because I
Oh
was a
wow.
skint student and no one was going to give me 5 grand credit card. But he was pretty worried that I wouldn't pay it off. But yeah, he took out a 12-month interest-free credit card, and luckily things kind of progressed fairly quickly, and I managed to get that paid off within the 12 months.
Ah, that's great. Do you think it gave you a bit of a push knowing that you had that your dad had helped you, that you had that to pay off? Were you a bit more like, I need to make this work at that point?
Well, yeah, I was absolutely shitting myself because I was in a 10-bedroom student house making badges with no real money, I guess, and all of a sudden I was importing a £5,000 like electronic badge machine, which
Oh
e-
man.
everyone around me thought was utter madness. Um, so yeah, I was a little bit scared, and I had a need to kind of make it work, and it just meant that I could say yes to everything that came in, and I could like meet orders, and quite lucky that it kind of quickly snowballed after I did that, and my intention really was to make my 3,000, 4,000 badges a day within 5 or 6 hours, but it quickly
Yeah.
scaled up to where I was back to the position of making them for like 10 or 12 hours a day, but albeit just making more.
So, what happened when you got that order for 80,000 badges in the inbox then? How did you react to that, first of all?
So the question was, can you make 80,000 badges in, I think, 2.5 or 3 weeks and package them into 20,000 grip seal bags? And I think I had one part-time staff and myself, and I was still going to uni. So I kind of took a minute and scratched my head, and then thought about it and was like, well, that's a fair amount of money. And then I quit uni and found a bunch of people to try and help me kind of get it done within the few-week period.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What was the time frame between getting that email and deciding you were quitting uni?
Well, I think I just didn't go in for 10 days to uni. And then I was like, I might as well quit now.
That makes
I
sense.
pretty much missed half the first semester anyway. So, yeah, I kind of went in, and I didn't outright quit. Actually, I spoke to them and kind of told them my situation, and they gave me a leave of absence. They were
Okay.
pretty supportive, and I had the kind of opportunity to go back if I needed to within the next couple of years. So, I didn't I didn't completely burn my bridges, but it was the end of my university career.
That's great. And if you're giving advice maybe to someone else, would you say that reviewing your options and maybe seeing that going to university isn't an essential option is something that you should consider?
For sure. I mean, it really depends on what you want to do, but yeah, I'd say that there's a lot of things you can do where you don't necessarily need to go to university and get a degree. It's a great experience for many people, but it obviously does come with a kind of cost to it. in terms
Yeah.
of finances. So I don't know. I think it's a shame that it's so expensive these days. It's maybe a little different to back in the day that I went, where it was still fairly cheap tuition wise. But I think yeah. I mean, certainly in kind of 2019, you can learn so much online and from so many different sources that it's not 100% necessary to go to university unless you want to be a doctor or a
Yeah, of
lawyer,
course.
one of those
Yeah.
kind of vocations.
No, I agree with you, and I like that you mentioned how it can be a really good experience for a lot of people, because I didn't go to university, and I was quite jealous of everyone at the time because I could see all my friends being at uni. But at the end of it, I pretty much went to all the same club nights and hung out with them while they were at uni. I just came out of it with 3 years work experience and no debt, whilst a lot of my friends had paid basically to experience it, and a lot of them were complaining about how little they learned during that time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly in my politics degree, I think there was 2 hours of lectures a week, and I'm not sure exactly how much it costs to go to university these days. I believe it's something like 9 grand a year. The, the math isn't
Yeah,
the math isn't too hot on that, considering they pretty much tell you to go away and read a book, which you can probably.
exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it's I don't know. It is interesting, and I think the other interesting thing about it is people that come out of uni now and they maybe have like 20, 30, 50, 60 grand debt, depending on
yeah,
how much help they got. I think obviously there are expectations coming out of university with that level of debt. Their expectations are high in terms of the job and the kind of opportunities that may be available for them, like out of the gates of uni. And I think, there's definitely a little disconnect from what I've seen between the job and the opportunity that you're probably going to walk into straight after university and your expectations in terms of I've just invested 50 grand or 60 grand in myself.
yeah,
It is quite, I find it quite interesting, and it's something that I've dealt with over the years at Awesome. When people have come to work with me straight out of uni, and in some respects, and not being disrespectful, a lot of people that haven't necessarily like worked in the real world or had a side hustle or been exposed to much else other than kind of school and university. I mean, you can be quite green, and I think it's
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting that kind of. I hate to go on about. I don't want to kind of bang on about millennials, but I think certainly people's expectations now have kind of changed because of the extension of education and also the kind of price tag that comes with it.
yeah, and also the expectation of the lifestyle. I think that comes as a reward. My partner, for example, did a film degree, and when she came to London to live and was getting paid a good wage, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the lifestyle that goes along with that wage, because there's the price tag then on living in a city that has those jobs too. And obviously, you go into London, it doesn't matter how much you're earning, you're paying that rent, and you're going to be in pretty much the same situation you would have been before anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly, cost of living can be an issue as well, and I think and lifestyle expectation has certainly shifted as well with things like Instagram and
So much, yeah.
yeah, and kind of celebrity and in 2019.
And I mean, that must have been really interesting for the business, because obviously things like Instagram and social media have been tools that would have, I'm guessing, helped you a lot with the business. But I'm guessing that there needs to be a balance between how that's used effectively without it harming you personally too.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean, social media is basically been the kind of bedrock for Awesome Merch's growth. I think whether it's us promoting ourselves or like a lot of our customers have had great success with growing audiences, whether it's like MySpace, Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah,
Twitter, and as a result of those audiences and that attention that they get, they buy product off Awesome, whether it's to promote themselves or to sell on. So we've certainly been very fortunate in many ways. We've kind of being there at the start of social and probably utilizing it quite early. But yeah, there can certainly be like a negative and dark side to it, I think. And it's I'm not an expert on it, but it's kind of obvious, I think, for most people that there's positives and negatives, and it yeah, being on Instagram all day isn't necessarily the most healthy thing, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. And something that you've talked about before and that I'm really passionate about is as a business, how you treat customers. And you mentioned a lot like authenticity, being customer focused. And I think that all those things are something that, again, are a fine line on social media because brands can come across quite fake in the same way that people can come across quite fake sometimes. How do you think you've kind of focused on maintaining that authenticity?
It's a good question. We just try and be like real people, to be honest, and I think we always have been, and we don't necessarily obviously like we try and sell stuff because we need to sell stuff to keep the lights on, keep people in work, and that's
Yeah.
kind of why we exist. But I think we we certainly back in the day and kind of social how it used to be, you could literally just talk to people online or put a little post out and people would talk to you in the comments of Facebook or reply back with Twitter. Um,
Yeah.
as it's become more noisy, that became a challenge because like engagement went down. So it was difficult to just have like little chat-ons on social, I guess. So the way that we've really tried to kind of stay authentic is to then shine a light on a lot of kind of what our customers are doing almost. So rather than shouting about ourselves, our kind of main focus on social often is to kind of showcase and basically create a little mini platform for the cool stuff that other people are making or doing, or then kind of being quite open and showing people the kind of behind the scenes of the factory or what our
Yeah.
staff are up to, just so they can kind of get a flavour of us being real people and kind of being passionate about what we do.
That's the thing. I'm so interested in marketing because I think that we've grown up, especially for myself, like being involved in the punk scene, having quite a negative view sometimes of marketing and how businesses market themselves because of how we see other people and other businesses conduct themselves. And yet there's such a nice way of being able to market yourself authentically with the customer's actual needs in mind. And obviously, at the end of the day, what you've just described, it does showcase what you do because you're providing all those artists with good quality things that people will be seeing and wanting to buy off you.
Yeah, for sure. And it took us a while to figure that out. It was, and it involved quite an investment from our side in terms of deciding to not only have someone do social and marketing full time, but then to get an additional person to pretty much take photos of half the stuff that's going on in the factory
Yeah,
or the product that's coming through the factory. And it was a real huge investment, and we didn't know if it was going to work. And it took a number of years actually to kind of get it to a stage where we're probably fairly happy with it. But um, yeah, when we figured out that actually there's loads of cool stuff that our customers are doing, maybe we should kind of tell their story as much as we tell our story. It was certainly kind of a shift, and it kind of started clicking into place for us in terms of having an angle that meant we weren't just promoting hey, buy 100 badges or a
yeah.
thousand flyers off us, and kind of just ramming that kind of sales message down people's throats.
Well, at the end of the day, you want bands to follow you on social media, and by that I mean to constantly remember that you're there. They're not constantly in need of buying things because no one's got the money to. So if your message is always the same, buy this, buy this, buy this, after the third message, people are going to sort of switch off unless they need to buy something at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people hate being sold to at the end of the day. I think
Yeah.
unless it's an unbelievable deal for something you want.
Yeah.
You just not, you're just surrounded by kind of marketing and sales chatter the whole time, and definitely like platforms like Instagram as well. That it's so that isn't like that is not like a usage really for Instagram at all,
Yeah.
and in
Yeah.
particular, or Twitter. It's just like why the hell do you want to see that? You want to see memes and pictures of cute dogs and grumpy cats and maybe see your friends drunk on the night out on their Insta story. You don't want to see a message from Awesome Merch or whoever it is, kind of trying to ram kind of sales down your throat.
That's the thing. For me, there's two types of marketing that I really like when I see it done, and that's how you do things. So shining a light on what other people are doing, especially if that's creative, because creative things are such a good medium for something like Instagram or Twitter. And the other side is when it's useful. If someone is not selling you something, just being like, oh, here's something that you can learn and that's useful, then I instantly think of that company the next time when I do need to find that information and pay someone for it.
Yeah, sure. And I think that kind of generosity and kind of sharing knowledge or just being helpful to people is a really good kind of tactic as well. Um, just like pretty much in any business, right? Even if you go out for dinner and say you're somewhere that isn't home, and like kind of the bartender or the waiter gives you like some recommendations on something that
Yeah,
might be cool to check out. It just makes the experience better, and you're building. I think you're building a bit of a human connection relationship with that person or that company as a result. So I think just being nice and helpful and human is a good thing to be in general, even if it's not in business.
of course. Yeah, of course. It's funny that just by practicing those those human skills of trying to be nice to other people, it can translate through to everything we do, including business. I chatted to my friend Shen, and I had him on the podcast recently. He's got businesses out in Penang in Malaysia. He started like a hip hop alternative clothing store first, and then in the back of that added like a secret cocktail bar. It's like he's like a wonderful entrepreneur. Again, started with just under £1,000 and has built it to something huge. But one of the things that stood out to us when we went to his cocktail bar is that he'd just like teach you how to make the cocktail if you liked it, or he'd bring some of the ingredients out from under the bar and be like, oh no, you need to taste this fresh because it's like you didn't know about this. And it's that human touch that he's got with everyone that comes in that makes you want to keep coming back, and not just that, to talk to other people about it as well.
Yeah, I actually listened to that, and it sounds great. Hopefully I'll get to Malaysia and go check it out someday again.
You
But
should do. You should do. I can give you an introduction. I'm sure he'd love to have you there.
yeah, it's a nice part of the world as well. I was lucky enough to go, probably 10 years ago actually. But yeah, I think that's it. It's just more interesting, It's I mean, I hate Weatherspoons for multiple reasons, but I'd much rather go and have that human connection and kind of feel it makes you feel a little bit special. At least it's a little more interesting, than kind of getting a kind of cookie cutter experience.
It's true. It's true. And it's funny about Weatherspoons because I hate them with a passion as well. I'm pretty sure for most of the same reasons as you. Um, but if I'm in a new place on my own and I don't know how to interact with other people, it is a very good place to just go have a chat with someone sometimes,
Yeah, I mean there are yeah. To be fair,
even if it's an
I should
argument.
probably rewind that. It's probably not the best thing for me to express hatred. I mean, and
Not
also,
hatred.
I mean, it is the awesome merchandise and BSM Records kind of hang out in Brighton at Great Escape. To be fair. Much business has been done in Weatherspoons Brighton, so.
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just bleep out the word of who it was so that no one can tell.
Well, I think actually the point for me is hanging your hat on hanging your hat on politics within business. I mean, so, it's in the manner that company has
Yeah,
is
exactly.
quite
Yeah.
quite astounding. I think I mean, I don't want to go. I don't want to go too
Well,
much
yeah.
into politics, but I think, I believe in freedom of speech, but I think it's definitely polarizing. If going into somewhere which could be that has so many outlets and kind of having messages like rammed down your neck is it
Yeah.
doesn't sit too well with me.
No, I think it's important. I think what you've just said about not going into politics too much is important in certain situations. I'm always the person that if I feel something's important to stand for, then I'm willing to make a stand.
Yeah, well, I think it's just having a respect for other people's views or right to have a view is important, and I feel
Yeah.
I don't know. Basically, I want to go to the pub to get away from Brexit and all that shit, and then to
Perfect. Yeah,
to
yeah.
stare it in the face is just quite bleak. There's no escape. So, I mean, that's one of my main that's one of my main issues
I
with
think
that scenario. But
I agree with that completely. So, one of the things that you mentioned when you actually got someone in to do social media, which I found was interesting, is that it took a while to nail down and get right. So, when you're giving advice to someone else who's maybe starting a business or just a creative project, something like a band, how important is sticking to something and making slow incremental improvements on it?
I think it's crucial, to be honest. I mean, there are rare occasions that are often highlighted, such as the rise of Facebook or other these other unicorn businesses, and that is not how the majority of people create successful businesses, or become successful in music or art. Like most musicians that kind of make a profession of it have to like learn their craft over a number of years, and many of them will be in many bands. Same for artists. You have to learn and kind of improve and find your feet and your style, and kind of gain some experience, so you can kind of go through that evolution and feel confident and get people interested in what it is you're doing. So yeah, I think it's no matter what you do, most of the time that there's going to be this pretty long kind of learning curve and gradual kind of build, and sometimes decline before you kind of build again, in a project or a business. And I think again, in today's world where you know things are like expectations are high, right? Everyone wants to kind of be an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to like run a startup. Everyone wants to kind of become a millionaire. Not
Yeah.
everyone, of course, but like that's the perception of running a business. For me, it's took 14 years for us to kind of be. I still view it as we're kind of almost at the start now. Like, Awesome Much is now a start, maybe a startup, and we've got the potential to kind of grow and make it into something quite exciting. But it took 10 years to get there for me, for sure.
Was there any point where you felt like you wanted to quit during that time, where you were like sick of it?
I don't know. I mean, moving to America had some bleak moments last year, to be honest.
I can
And I
imagine
kind of
that's a
was,
big change.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of at a different. I guess that's kind of at a different stage. But in the early days, I mean, I never wanted to quit because I like the kind of hustle. I kind of been describing it recently as I see it a little bit like the game Roller Coaster Tycoon, if you
Yeah,
remember that. So it's like,
I loved that game. Yeah.
yeah. So like we were fortunate in that we've managed to kind of pretty much constantly grow and evolve like every year, um, and have like kind of new stuff going on. So it's always been exciting, but it was certainly a lot of work, and I sacrificed quite a lot through my 20s in terms of things like not moving to London, things like working probably 60, 70 hours a week most weeks. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I wanted to quit, because I enjoyed it and I was happy to be doing something that was like my own and kind of a project. But it was, yeah, it wasn't. It's
No,
not always been. It's not always been like rosy, if that makes sense.
absolutely, and I think it's really encouraging to hear you say that, because there's no point in pretending that even businesses or projects we enjoy aren't hard work. Like, even playing in a band, the aspect of the amount of work that goes into practicing and touring and being in a van, every aspect of things we love can have very, very tiring negative effects at times that obviously are then balanced out by positives. But you, as you mentioned before, there can be quite a rose tinted view of expectations. So it's nice for people to know that starting a business, starting a startup, anything like that is still hard work.
Yeah, it's not nothing worth having is easy. It's a little bit cliched, but I mean the band thing. Like I've got a bunch of friends in bands. Some of them like fairly successful and popular. That is hard work. That is
Yeah,
hard work. Going to somewhere different every day, sitting in the van, or even, I mean, I guess a bus is slightly better if you're big enough for that, which is rare. Um, it's hard work. Even you kind of living in service stations, sitting in vans, and you kind of sitting around all day without your bed, without your friends, most of the time without much money, and then you get half an hour to an hour of fun on a night, and then probably a hangover to deal with the next day. Um,
yeah,
it's hard work. I actually I stood in for my friend's band one time, and I think we drove from Leeds to Peterborough, and then had to sit in the van for 3 hours before the gig, and I was like, "Wow, this is what my dream was," and I was like, "I'm not sure anymore."
yeah. No, absolutely. The last few tours that I did, I remember finding that 3 hour wait between getting to a venue, setting up, and then having to wait for the gig, the hardest 3 hours, because I know I'm not I'm not 20 anymore, and I can't just start smashing back beers, because by day three I am absolutely wrecked. But just having to deal with new people, with your own anxiety, with missing home, along with the work and your own health, is a hell of a lot to think about. Like, a lot to think about. And I've got so much respect for anyone that plays in bands or does creative projects of any type whilst having to work full time, because it's so much to take on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a sacrifice there for I guess your art. Really, it's yeah, it
Yeah,
it looks easy and fun from the outside, but for sure there's like a lot of sacrifice that goes into any kind of endeavor like that.
absolutely. One of the things I wanted to ask you and get your opinion on, considering that Awesome Merch is like 14 years you've been carrying on, and as you mentioned, there's obviously ups and downs. What's your point of view of the sort of Silicon Valley failure is a good thing ideology that's going around, where people are like, oh, well, I've had 10 companies and all of them have failed, but it's a good thing because I've learned and now I'm going to do one that works. What do you think about that kind of mentality?
My first question would be, how much of other people's money did you spend?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's well, I mean, it's I don't know, right? You certainly you need money to build certain things, I think, but you can get started with very little money and bootstrapping. Um,
Yeah,
that's the world that Awesome Merch was born out of. Silicon Valley like probably was a thing in 2005, but not. We
not like
hadn't
it
had.
is. No.
Yeah, we hadn't had kind of 2008 kind of peak South by Southwest with like Twitter
Yeah.
blowing off and then Instagram emerging and stuff like that. So um, I didn't know that, until recently, until some of my friends that run like craft breweries did kind of Crowdcube and did like
Yeah.
fundraisers. I didn't know that you could actually go out and get money for your business unless you were trying to become Microsoft or Facebook, so my, I don't know. I think there's definitely there's definitely a space for it,
Yeah.
but I don't think. I think if you fail 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 times, I think maybe maybe you're in the wrong kind of line of work.
Well, this is the thing that I am very big on learning from mistakes, and I definitely think that you can use failure as a learning curve and even something to propel you to do something better. But that's only if you actually. It's almost like the Silicon Valley ideology that they're encouraging is setting out with failure as an option. And that to me seems really odd, to not really be worried about whether it succeeds or not. To me, just makes it more likely that it's going to fail.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree, and some of the things that you see come out, some of the products that you see having been invested into, the kind of amounts of money that is burnt through. I mean, some of them are just fundamentally kind of bad ideas, or there does not appear to be that big a market for it, which I think is interesting. I mean, there's I don't yeah, I'm not a complete expert on that kind of world, but I've worked in a couple of WeWorks when we were getting awesome set up in the US,
Yeah.
and I mean, I honestly, it is jaw dropping coming from England, working in the red light district of Leeds, where we had a sausage roll van come round, and then people at this company that's never made any money, well, loses a lot of money getting kind of catered breakfast, lunch, and dinners every day,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like it is a different world that 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 I struggle to understand to some extent. But it exists, and some kind of cool companies and things come out of that. I just think maybe it's at its peak, and there'll be kind of a shift to where there's not as much kind of free money going into companies that you can just set on fire and then close the door.
Exactly. Yeah, and the reason I wanted to ask is to kind of line up to talk a bit about obviously the Crowdcube that you were involved in. But I find it really interesting that there is plenty of money to go round in the world. Um, and I think things like Crowdcube are shining the light on people who actually deserve that money and have great ideas and projects that they want to accomplish. And I hope that we're coming up to that peak, as you mentioned, where the money's shifting over from circles where it's flowing about more easily and maybe being misused by some people, even if that's unintentionally, to people who are actually trying to do real good and who have really good ideas that deserve to be showcased.
Yeah, and I think Crowdcube's is an interesting platform and potentially great in terms of access to funds. There is actually there's actually quite a lot of misuse of funds on those kind of like equity crowdfunding
Well,
platforms
yeah,
as well,
yeah,
it was something that I've been kind of following it quite closely, kind of prior to us doing our raise on the platform, and then kind of afterwards. Um, but I think it's like anything. I think if there's, I don't know, it's all it's not free. It should not be viewed as free money, but some people view it
yeah,
as such. And it comes, for me, raising money, whether it's from from a platform like Crowdcube or Seeders, whether it's from the bank, whether it's from angel investors, or whatever the source. There's a responsibility there to kind of have a plan in place and actually do, as a minimum, to do everything you can to kind of deliver on what you said you would, and try and make the business, or whether it's a Kickstarter or a pledge campaign or whatever it is, to just follow through on what you said you'd do. If someone's going to give you
yeah,
money, you um, you should put your responsibility for trying to kind of deliver on your promises first. Sorry, that's kind of a
yeah,
little
absolutely.
tangent.
No, no, I think that to me is something that is really important to mention. I was really, really negative about all crowdsourcing type websites for quite a long time because I feel like I saw it misused, and I want to be careful because I don't want to. I'm not talking about anyone in particular here. Just a general. I saw a lot of people who had a lot of followers on social media, say Twitter, Facebook, any of those social media accounts, using it for their own personal gain as opposed to give anything back. And for me, that was a big flaw in the system. And it took a while before I started seeing people use it in ways that I found to be really effective and really loved. And yourselves, Signature Brew, there's been a few examples where I've been really, really, I don't know, it suddenly shines light on how that site was supposed to be used by people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, it makes sense, and I think Signature Brew, cool. Actually, I'm a I'm an investor in those guys. I'm known,
Ah, excellent. Yeah, I
yeah,
love Signature Brew.
I've known one of them since I was 16 in punk bands back in Wolverhampton. But
Ah, is that Sam by any chance?
yeah, it's Sam. Yeah,
Yeah, I know Sam. Yeah, I know Sam and Dave. Yeah, they've been great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, good guys. No, I think there's I don't know. There's a lot of the breweries have kind of done a fairly good job of
Yeah.
of using that model, and that's really what we kind of took to decide that it was a route that Awesome might be able to take. And I think there's definitely been recently things like Northern Monk and
Yeah.
um, I mean, Camden Town and obviously Brewdog's the big one. A lot of them are actually delivering on what they said they would, and they're kind of creating great products, and they're building like brands that have got an affinity with people. And
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense in those cases. As long as they do the best to kind of follow through. But I mean, beer's interesting because everyone in England loves beer, right? Or Britain loves beer so much. So it's a good business to be in. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one, and I think whether it is one of those equity platforms or it is something like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, there's always going to be kind of a differential between the delivery and the people that are running the project, and then maybe
Yeah.
their ability to kind of deliver on what they say they were going to. And I think I don't know. I guess my only hope is that people are kind of sensible and honest and do the very best. If they're going out and asking people for money, that they're doing the very best to kind of deliver on that at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to highlight. Um, Talking about raising funds, how did you feel when the target that you'd set on Crowdcube of 350,000 was absolutely smashed?
Um, just I felt utter relief, if I'm being honest. It was the single worst thing that I've had to do since I started the business. I'm not usually very anxious person or kind of stressed out person, but yeah, that whole kind of project was and putting yourself out there in that kind of vulnerable state. I think especially because Awesome had been going so long, and it wasn't,
Yeah.
and we were established. And we're a print company, which often isn't, the most sexy kind of business. It's not beer or kind of boutique gin company or whatever. So I was just extremely relieved, to be honest, and also extremely thankful for all the support we had from kind of customers, family, and friends, and a large pool of investors that we never kind of met in person before. So yeah,
I
kind
can
of
imagine.
extremely
Yeah.
humbled and and extremely relieved.
Well, I'm so glad it worked out that way. It must have been a pretty uphill battle getting to the States, setting something new up. I think you mentioned at one point where you had the warehouse where it was just a big empty warehouse. How much work went into getting that sorted? It must have been like ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, the whole project was like a pipe dream for the last like maybe 5 or 6 years, and it was truly a pipe dream. I was telling people close to me that I wanted to open in America one day, and um, I mean, how I didn't know how you do that, so it was a total mission, and we got to the point where we thought we could do it, and we kind of we just like, yeah, let's go for it. But there was so much to it in terms of visas, legals, like financing. We had our finance the day before I flew out to the US. The bank pulled our financing for the whole things.
Ah,
So,
no way.
which was, you can imagine, like I was meant to be excited to move to the US, and like I was on the phone to the bank, and they were like,
Oh,
"We're not going to give you £300,000 now. Um, I'm sorry."
oh,
Um, and then yeah, it was an absolute minefield, and a lot of yeah, it was very difficult. We signed our lease, and the construction costs tripled after we signed our lease,
oh, no
and
way.
stuff like this. So it was just it was a little bit of a minefield, and we were meant to kind of get operating kind of April, May last year. We were paying rent on 20,000 square feet of factory, and we didn't get kind of up and running till December this in of that year. So
Yeah,
um, yeah, it felt like a big black hole, to be honest, and we had to kind of slowly try and climb out of it, but we're kind of getting there. But it's interesting when you do something that on the outside it looks and it is very exciting, but it looks like you're kind of pursuing your dream, and it's very exciting.
yeah.
You're getting to have these experiences and move to the US to kind of set up your business. But oh man, it's not. It is not easy.
I can imagine. And I think it's so important that people hear that because it's so easy to, as you say, look at what other people are doing and be jealous and envious of their lives without really having any knowledge of what they're going through behind that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's I think that's important. I think it's important, as everyone, no matter how good something looks or big something looks. I mean, probably the better and bigger it looks, it might come with a lot more kind of responsibility and stress and kind of
Yeah.
financial burden. So, and it's, I don't know. I never kind of. I wouldn't. I try not to complain about the position I'm in, because it's firstly, I've created it for myself and made choices that kind of have put me in
Yeah.
these sometimes kind of difficult and stressful situations. But also, um, on the flip side, I want to be there, and I'm fortunate at kind of the kind of life that kind of accidentally really happened with Awesome, and part of kind of moving to the US and trying to build the company up again there is is basically, I don't know, just trying to take this kind of as a project to the extremities really, and try and see how far I can take it. But yeah, that's my choice. But it's certainly not always. It's maybe not as always fun and glamorous as it might look from the outside.
Yeah, and I think you've described that really well because it, when we take control of our lives and we're doing what we want to do, maybe there's an expectation when we start doing that we will enjoy every second of it, and that's not true. There's so many hardships that come along with any decision that we make, really. But reminding ourselves that it was our decision and that we've been lucky enough to choose that can make a difference. Sometimes, personally, at least, when I'm having a bad day, reminding myself that I get to work from home because I wanted to work from home gets me through that tough patch.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. It's, there's a, how did you put, there's a flip side to everything, I guess, isn't there? So you're
Yeah,
afforded your freedom, but it might come with certain challenges or kind of yeah, potential problems. So yeah, I think it's, the main thing is are you kind of pursuing things that you want to pursue? Are you living in a way that or trying to live in a way that is kind of true to yourself, that gives you the potential to be happy, even if it doesn't kind of render you kind of happy the whole time.
yeah. Well, I think that is the perfect quote to pretty much end the conversation on because it's so poignant. It's really important. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, Luke, and it's been really humbling to have you on the show. I know you're working incredibly hard, so thank you for finding time for us.
Oh no, thank you ever so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
No matter how good something looks or big something looks, I mean, probably the better and bigger it looks, it might come with a lot more kind of responsibility and stress.
So there it is. I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Luke Hodson, creator of Awesome Merch. And I really hope that it's inspired you, motivated you, encouraged you, whether that's to start a new business from scratch, to reevaluate what you're doing, or just to do something completely unrelated to the conversation that we just had, but now you feel motivated and ready to go. That is exactly the purpose of this podcast. And I would also love to hear from all you listeners. Who should I be talking to next? Who would you like on the podcast? I will do my best to make it happen. As always, please, please, please share it around. It really, really helps. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, give us a follow. If you're on YouTube, give us a follow. Leave us a comment on any type of social media. It helps. It really does. And I will hopefully chat to you soon.
No matter how good something looks or big something looks, I mean, probably the better and bigger it looks, it might come with a lot more kind of responsibility and stress.